One empire in the west, one empire in the east, and between them, men who got rich, making sure they never met. Act 1. Two empires, one world. It is the year 100 AD. Rome controls 30 million people across 3 continents. Its roads stretch 85,000 kilometers. Its legions have never lost a war they chose to fight. 5,000 kilometers to the east, the Han Dynasty of China controls 60 million people, twice Rome's population. Its scholars have invented paper. Its engineers have built canals that would astonish even Roman engineers. Its armies have pushed the nomadic Xiongnu back into the frozen steppe. By every measure of civilization, these two empires are equals. But between them lies a world they cannot cross. 3,000 miles of desert, mountain, and the most powerful middlemen in human history. In Rome's markets, there is one luxury that senators fight over. One fabric so impossibly fine that no Roman can explain where it comes from. They call it silk. They call the people who make it the Saris, the silk people. They believe it is combed from the leaves of trees. They have no idea. They are wrong about almost everything. In China, the records speak of a distant empire to the far west, a great nation they call Dakin. Great Qin. A place so remote it might as well be a legend. But the silk keeps moving toward it. The demand keeps pulling. The Parthian Empire sat between these two worlds like a toll booth on the world's most valuable highway. Every bolt of silk heading west, every Roman coin heading east, all of it passed through Parthian hands. They took their cut, and they had every reason to make sure Rome and China never found each other directly. Historians believe Parthian merchants actively spread misinformation, telling Romans that the sea route to China was impossibly long, and telling the Chinese that Rome was too distant to reach. It was one of the most profitable lies in history. Act 2. 3 moments that almost changed everything. In 97 AD, a Chinese envoy named Gan Ying came closer to closing the gap between Rome and China than anyone before or after him. Sent westward by the great Han general Ban Chao with a single mission, find Rome. Gan Ying crossed deserts and mountain ranges and kingdoms that had never seen a Han diplomat. He reached the Persian Gulf. He stood on the western edge of the known world and looked out across the water. Rome was on the other side, just beyond that horizon. And then the Parthian sailors told him the truth, their version of it, that the crossing was enormous, that it could take 2 years, that men lost their minds from homesickness, that some never returned. It was almost certainly a lie. Ships were regularly making that crossing in weeks, but Gan Ying didn't know that. He turned back. 69 years later, in 166 AD, a group of men arrived at the Han Dynasty imperial court in Luoyang, claiming to be envoys from Rome. Sent, they said, by an emperor they called Andun, a transliteration, scholars believe, of Antoninus, as in Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, Emperor of Rome. This is the only officially recorded meeting between a Roman delegation and a Chinese imperial court that survives in all of history. There is a catch. The gifts they brought, ivory, rhinoceros horn, tortoiseshell, were goods from Southeast Asia, not the gold or glass a Roman emperor would typically send. Many historians believe these men were merchants, not diplomats. Romans who had traveled the sea routes through India arrived in China and introduced themselves as the voice of Rome to gain access to the emperor's court. We may never know. But the meeting happened. For one brief moment, a Roman stood in the court of the Han emperor, and 2 worlds touched. If Gan Ying had made that sea crossing, he would have arrived in Rome during the reign of Emperor Trajan, arguably Rome's greatest military emperor at the height of the empire's power. A direct alliance between the 2 superpowers could have redrawn the map of the ancient world. Act 3. What the ground remembers. For all the uncertainty about human contact, the material evidence is undeniable. In the tombs near Xi'an, the Han capital, archaeologists have found Roman coins. Not one, multiple. These coins traveled thousands of miles, changed hands dozens of times, and ended up buried with Chinese noblemen who valued them enough to take into the grave. Beneath the ancient church of St. Agnes in Rome, scientists using electron microscopy identified silk fibers of Chinese origin in a 2,000-year-old fabric. A person in Rome had worn something made in China. In Palmyra, the great trading city sitting between the two empires, archaeologists found Chinese silk with Chinese characters still legible. Inside a merchant's tomb, a man who built his whole life on moving goods between worlds that never formally met. And then there is the most dramatic theory of all. In 53 BC, the Roman general Crassus led 7 legions into Parthia and walked into a catastrophe. 20,000 Romans were killed, 10,000 taken prisoner. American historian Homer Dubs proposed in 1957 that some of those prisoners eventually ended up in China, captured by the Xiongnu, then surrendered to Han forces, and settled in a village in Gansu province that the Chinese called Liqian, their own name for Rome. The theory gripped China for decades. A museum was built, statues erected, villagers with lighter features embraced their alleged Roman ancestry. Then came the DNA tests. 77% of the Y chromosomes from Liqian villagers were overwhelmingly East Asian. The Caucasian traits found in a handful of residents were almost certainly the residue of centuries of Silk Road mixing, traders and travelers passing through across generations. The Lost Legion is a beautiful story. It is not, it seems, a true one. The answer. So, did Rome and China ever meet? The answer is yes and no, and both halves of that answer matter. No emperor ever wrote to the other. No army ever fought beside the other. The grand formal meeting between East and West never happened. But through silk and coins and glass, through one envoy who stood at the edge of the sea and turned back, through merchants who talked their way into an imperial court, they reached each other, imperfectly, partially, across an impossible distance. They met the way most of the ancient world met, not through power, not through armies, but through ordinary people who wanted something the other had, and who were willing to walk to the edge of the known world to get it. Both empires eventually fell. Rome collapsed in the 5th century. The Han Dynasty ended in 220 AD. But the road between them, the Silk Road, outlasted both. It carried Buddhism and the Black Death, and Islam and the Renaissance. It carried Marco Polo east and Chinese ideas west. It was more durable than either empire that fed it. The desire to connect, to reach across distance and difference for something valuable on the other side, that never needed an emperor's permission. It just needed people willing to walk. They always have.